There is little sign of an appropriate response right now. Pete Hegseth, who shared attack plans that nearly every expert say is likely classified, remains in his position. He said on Wednesday, "I know exactly what I'm doing." National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who added Atlantic reporter Jeffrey Goldberg to that group chat, also remains at his job for now. NBC News reporting this today, quote, "A growing number of Donald Trump's allies are calling on the president to fire his national security advisor, Mike Waltz. Regardless of what happens, our adversaries, in addition to our allies, they are also watching with close interest." As reporter Noah Shackman writes in the New York Times, "If you are running the security directorate of a hostile nation, savor this moment. It has never been easier to steal secrets from the United States government. Can you even call it stealing when it's this simple?"
National security strikes were being discussed on the same app that your teenage son or daughter may use to sneak out, go to a party, and hook up. Let's just be real about it. That's the level that we're talking about.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. We are not backing off this story. The Trump administration put the lives of American service members at risk with its total disregard for operational security. And now they are lying about it. The only way they'll get away with the cover-up is if we let them. And we're not going to let them. We're not going to let up on this story like we sometimes do, because lives are at stake. Buddies of mine who risk everything to defend the country and do so trusting that their lives are valued. What we saw from Pete Hegseth and his band of fools is all the proof we need that not only do they not follow the rules that everyone else in the military is bound to, but they cannot be trusted with the lives of Americans in uniform. They are not serious people. Some are still arguing that they didn't do anything wrong. It is absurd, it is infuriating, and it's going to get Americans killed. I asked Commander Bobby Jones, who led a Navy task group and, like me, had some of the highest level security clearances, to give us some context. He explains OPSEC, or operational security, why it is so important to maintain, and why the Trump National Security Team is a danger to our men and women in uniform.
Hi, this is Bobby Jones for Midas Touch Network and Valor Media. I just want to talk into a topic that is obviously dominating the current news cycle, and that is Signalgate. You may have heard the term loose lips sink ships. That's what we call operational security in action, OPSEC. But where did it come from? What are the origins of it in the American military, and why should you care? Well, I want to give you a little bit of history on that and specifically talk about the long-standing ramifications of such violations. So let's go back a little bit, really not that long ago, to the Vietnam War. Vietnam is the first time that American forces actually used the term operational security, or OPSEC for short. The thing about it is, operational security, OPSEC, has been used by many nations for hundreds of years, predating the United States of America. Famously, loose lips sink ships was a very popular term to use in World War II to convey the seriousness of hiding critical operations. And that's what OPSEC is in a nutshell. Operational security is denying enemy forces any information that can be put together to possibly figure out future military action. That's simple. All the fancy terms you hear is just, hey, basically, don't snitch on what's about to happen. Okay, so World War II, Revolutionary War, Civil War, you see all sorts of spy games that were actually conducted by forces to get the upper hand. Why? Because at the end of the day, technology, tactics, and even strategies change. But the most critical piece of real-time military information is always information. Always has been, always will be, no matter what. So that being said, in Vietnam, it seemed like America had forgotten a lot of the lessons learned from World War II, right? The Viet Cong was able to stay a step ahead of American forces, sometimes leading America into ambushes all throughout the battle space. And that was because The Viet Cong had a very, very well put together spy network that was embedded in American forces, embedded in various cities, towns, hamlets that American forces operated in, and it put America at a distinctive disadvantage despite the military hardware, military superiority, organization, supply chain, etc. Okay, and then post-Vietnam, we saw violations of OPSEC that led to, unfortunately, the death of American service members, such as the USS Cole, right? So let me use Cole and other examples to kind of make this much more plain. USS Cole being a U.S. Navy warship, there are things that you have to have when a ship pulls in and things that a ship takes on board before it pulls out. Well, the operational schedule was leaked in 2000 about the Cole. So enemy forces knew the Cole was going to be there, did not have the adequate security to repel attacks, and unfortunately, sailors lost their lives. If you know that a ship is pulling into a port, you can kind of get a good idea of what's being set up, who's hanging around the pier, what type of things are going to be brought on. These are what we call breadcrumbs that lead to bigger operational revelations. And any breadcrumb, and I mean no matter how small, can lead to such catastrophic results. So if you take into account what happened here this past week with the National Security Team, to include the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Advisor, the Director of National Intelligence, the Vice President of the United States, senior CIA officials, all of these people conversing about, quite simply, time, place, method, those three things in real time, and then giving battle damage assessment. Had that information fell into the wrong hands, you would have not just a violation of the actual operation that was going on, right? Putting lives and the mission in jeopardy. But enemy forces can then use the data that they have found and create a pattern, see what the pattern is for military operations specifically in that area. Our techniques, tactics, and procedures, or TTPs, could be unveiled to enemy forces to be exploited at a later date.
Hey, it's Ken Harbaugh. Check out the new trailer for Valor Media Network. Together, we can take on Joe Rogan and his Manosphere Bros and win. Click the link below to subscribe to Valor Media Network and share it with a friend. Thanks, Midas Mighty. We got this.
There's not enough men like me who do whatever they want.
Are you sick of it yet?
Those people need to be, when we take power, they need to be given the death penalty.
The anger.
I live like a capitalist every single day, Shank. I live as a capitalist.
The hate.
And we have a system of checks and balances. That's a good one. That's really funny. We do?
The idea that to be a man, you have to be a bully. Fuck you! We should be better than this.
Females don't have independent thought. They don't come up with anything.
Our kids deserve better than this.
It's like women want equal rights when it's convenient, but then they still want the door open for them.
So help us change it. Subscribe to Valor Media Network, where you can find shows on sports, men's health, and patriotism without the resentment and division.
True strength is about discipline, resilience, and service.
If you've wondered where all the positive role models are, especially for young men, check out Navy SEAL Dan Barkov and Commander Bobby Jones as they share stories of service and sacrifice.
Being good at being a man is about what you do for others and not what you do for yourself.
Listen to Jason Tander and co-hosts Ravi Gupta and Adisu Demisi give you the inside track on the politics of sports.
I just want to take back what I said about the Bills. No, because in all honesty, your team seems to have gotten the vaccination thing right. Okay. My team seems to be struggling with it.
These shows and many more from Valor Media Network prove that you don't have to be an asshole to connect with young men today. Subscribe to Valor Media Network today.
Right now, everybody is trying to politicize this, and you can go and talk to anybody about the spin of this. But let me put this in more realistic perspective. If you are in the United States military, you go through training constantly about operational security. I mean, to the point where if you are a force that's about to deploy, you can't really tell your family where you're going. You can't tell your family how long you're going. And even when they find out where you're going, they're not supposed to say anything, right? These are done because we understand in the 21st century, communications are constantly monitored. You have what we call human intelligence, or HUMINT. You have signal intelligence, SIGINT. You have all of these various ways that opposing forces can cobble together pieces, cobble together information, create a picture that you may not realize the enemy has. And when they understand what you're trying to do strategically, and then can match it with the tactical level where, you're on the ground shooting pew, 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 that is a very dangerous combination, because not only will it compromise the mission, but they can set you up to be ambushed. There's time and time again, going all the way back to the Trojan War and the Trojan horse, these violations of operational security, or OPSEC, have led to the loss of wars, have led to the loss of life, and have shaped human history. Another great example of that is when the Japanese code was broken during World War II. Okay, that code being broke in the Pacific War allowed the United States to anticipate Japanese attacks and completely change the course of the war and the course of history. So let's come back to 2025. Right now, you have the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Advisor, the Vice President of the United States, the the Director of National Intelligence. All of these people were getting real-time information and accidentally added a journalist. Now, as boneheaded as that seems, and it is, think about this. We don't know how long that type of communication was going on at that higher level. National security strikes were being discussed on the same app that your teenage son or daughter may use to sneak out, go to a party, and hook up. Let's just be real about it. That's the level that we're talking about. That should terrify everybody. And the thing that I think that really disturbs me more than anything else about this is there's a blatant violation of a national law. Okay, a national law that, again, if you're in the military, you learn about when you go through OPSEC training. And that's basically the retention of government records. There's a reason that all military and really government officials have to communicate on government sanctioned apparatuses. It's not just because they want to protect the information, they want to record it, as in national history, as in that is important moving forward. Okay? You should not be having high-level national security discussions on a third-party app that does not record the discussion. That is an absolute violation. It escapes oversight, not just from the president, but from Congress, all branches of service. This, to me, seemed like a way to make sure that critical national security discussions escaped oversight. And that is extremely dangerous, and every person in that chat group should know better. And if they don't, and if they didn't, that shows that they were unqualified to have the job. That's simple. That's simple. Because if I would have did that as a naval officer, I would be brought up on charges, court-martialed, and probably sent off to Fort Leavenworth eventually. That's how serious we're talking. Every year, repeatedly, military members have to go through this training. And the final piece that I think is not being discussed, how can you be the head of a department, a national department like the Department of Defense or National Intelligence or any type, CIA, any type of government organization, and sit there and tell people you must hold the standard and we have high standards when you yourself are violating it in the most lazy and callous way? You have no credibility with the people you're leading, because the standard that you say you're holding up, you as the leader should be held to the highest version of that standard. And what we just saw was a blatant disregard for national security, and just as important, a blatant disregard for high standards that keep our nation and our service members safe.